Everybody, welcome to Global Leaders Local Coffee. I'm joined today by David Cancel, co-founder and CEO of Drift, also a really good friend. So I'm super excited to have DC here with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, so if anybody doesn't know what Drift does, which I can't imagine anybody in this world that doesn't know Drift at this point, we're both representing, I guess, today.
Yeah.
Can you give them a little bit of an overview on Drift? What you and the team have been building for many years. What makes you guys special?
Sure. So basically, we started Drift because we had been in the sales and marketing software world for a long time, and we realized that everything that we had built in the past was built for a world where the company could dictate the buying process. And basically at Drift, what we're trying to do is reinvent that and really focus on transforming the way buyers buy from other businesses. And so we put the buyer first. We're reinventing everything from the very experience of how you have conversations with customers and prospects on your website, all the way down to eventually the CRM and what that means.
And more important than ever, I imagine, during this time, right, where people can't
Yes.
get out to conferences, can't get out to see customers as much as they normally would have.
Super important, especially in the larger businesses, which were still relying on, steak dinners and flying people around and kickoffs and QBRs and all that kind of stuff. Now, and we're convinced that they couldn't sell the biggest deals without doing that. And now 100% of them across the world have had to do that. And so they've adopted, their digital transformation has accelerated by a decade.
Yeah, for sure. No, seeing it all over the place. And this is Global Leaders Local Coffee. Are you a coffee drinker? Are you a tea drinker? What's your passion here?
Coffee drinker.
Hardcore too.
Hardcore French press. Yeah, Ooh. French press. And I go in between a different brands, but usually this is Peet's Major Dickinson blend, which is my standard.
And you and I have met for coffee. So we're not. This is not a really global one. If you're really 10 minutes from my house, which I think you are.
Yes.
We've met at a local coffee place called Zoomies, which is pretty awesome as well, which is a great local coffee spot here in Massachusetts. So, for those that don't know you, you also had a killer podcast that you created. Heard rumors it's kind of coming back in full on called Seeking Wisdom. One thing that you always covered in Seeking Wisdom is what are you reading? And there's one thing that I remember picking up from that. I always had this belief I had to finish every book. And you had a rant at one point of if you don't like the book, put it down and pick up another book. And so now because of you, I got a stack of 3 books on my nightstand and I'll just shuffle between them and context shift. But what book is top of mind right now? What are you reading during the pandemic?
I was literally reading this minutes before this started, and it is called Wherever You Go, There You Are. It's about mindfulness meditation and John Kabat-Zinn. Some people call him K to Z. But just started reading this. I've read some of his other books and haven't read this one. And it's an easy read because every chapter can be read almost as a standalone. And so it's super easy and especially relevant in this time right now as people struggle with this time. So pick up this book.
Very cool. That's a great one. I just got this one and I haven't even opened it yet. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, yeah, Dave Walter.
Yeah, so absolutely awesome. Excited to read it. It's going to be my weekend reading. It seems like a great one. I think one of the things that I know before I kind of dive into some of the personal questions, love to go kind of a little more personal than normal in these chats. But I know one thing that's just top of mind for you and your co-founder, huge trend around obviously social injustice, diversity, how tech can adapt to diversity. I know it's been big in kind of your mind for a long time. It's kind of in the forefront for so many other entrepreneurs and businesses right now. Question I have for you is how do we get better, right? You're great at analyzing kind of systemic issues and what we can do about it. So I know you've probably put a lot of time and effort, not just on kind of what's hot in the news right now, but also how do we actually fix it, right? And how do we systemically address the inequality that's existed for too long?
Sure. So it's something obviously I dealt with my entire life. So I've been thinking about it for a long time. And in some ways, Drift. And the reason we started Drift is to try to change some of these things. It's beyond sales and marketing software and all that kind of stuff. So it's deep ingrained in what we do from a personal level, myself and Elias, who founded the business. But we think about it all the time. And I think systemic is the right way to think about it, right? Like system. And for us, we think, and we look at it from a very long lens. And we think the non-satisfying answer and the way we think about it is that we have to do things that are going to be going to take generations in order to be able to fix some of these problems. And I think, a lot of people want an initiative, they want a hashtag, they want an icon. They want something to get behind, but that is not going to fix anything, right? Like the real issue is going to take a long time. And so what we do from Drift, from a foundation standpoint, but also personally, is like we are focused on kids who are coming from underrepresented classes, and just like, how do we help more of them come into the world that you and I both know, Mike, right? Like, and so like we work with kids in high school, we work with kids in a little bit of middle school, but like basically before they've made the choice and before they've had the access to a role model and made that choice in college, right? And so like that's where we're focused. But by definition, that's going to take a very long time. But that's the real answer. And I think beyond that, like what can other people do? I think the easy answer is like there are decisions that you make in your business every single day, and the easy path is not going to lead to any change. You have to do the extra work. And I remember having a conversation with one of our recruiters who's like very motivated and focused on this issue. And I said, and she was talking about some initiatives. I'm like, forget the initiatives. You are the recruiter, right? Like you are the recruiter. Let me go by the last, 10 people that you recruited. Like you took the easy path. You took the path of least resistance. You got a whole bunch of inbound stuff. You took the easy path. You got to do the hard work. That's the only way it's going to be fixed. Like you got to go do the hard work and maybe spend twice as long looking in places that you would normally not look, that are uncomfortable. That's how you fix it. I'm not going to fix it for you by giving you some initiative, right? So like that's the real answer.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I had a same discussion with one of our execs where it was like, hey, this isn't about kind of picking the best applicant. It's about searching for the best candidate. Right.
Yes, exactly.
And so we kind of have been using this, like our job is to go find the flymate that doesn't know they're a flymate yet. And that may be looking in pockets than we normally would have. And I've also noticed just personally, as I've said, hey, I'm going to dive into this. The more you increase your network, the more you look at your network on LinkedIn, the more you realize like, you just broaden that network, and then you start to see pockets of other parts of diversity or recruiting pockets that you may not have even seen before, because you're connected to different people that you weren't connected to before. And so I think that's all part of the solution, but I couldn't agree more. It's more than just a hashtag, right? The easy part is to sit on our couches and to tweet. The hard part is to put in the time and the reps
to do it. And guess what? The stuff that you're doing by going in other pockets, it's uncomfortable. It should be uncomfortable. It's a lot of work. Everyone's got, endless work right now, but that's the only way if you actually want to do something.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm a big believer when it comes to leadership that like we're all, and frankly, anything you want to do in life, it's about knowing kind of who you are. It's about knowing what made you. It's about figuring out what you love to do. And you and I have riffed on that in the past. Can you open up the audience a little bit to, when you look back on your childhood, what were some of the things that you learned from that helped influence who you became and what you wanted to do in tech?
Sure. I'll try to shorten it because it's so long. But I think, I was basically raised my parents emigrated here. I learned English watching TV because ESL didn't exist, at least in my world. So like I had only spoke Spanish at home until a certain age. And then, basically raised by my mom. My dad was in and out. And so like, that's a classic story. That's not anything unusual. But, they both had worked for themselves, and those became my role models of like, being able to work for yourself. And then was frankly bored in school, but then discovered because I figured out later that I could only be motivated by being around people that are passionate about whatever it is that they're talking about or teaching. And I wasn't exposed to that. But, I'm a self-learner. And so like I became obsessed with the internet in college, and then that's all I wanted to do, went deep and basically taught myself all this stuff, and which led to the creation of companies, because the thing that motivated me was the learning part and the feedback loop and that part. And those things kind of like ended up becoming companies. So I'm like a terrible person. And I actually spent a lot of time helping kids in mostly graduate school. And, they asked me for career advice. I'm like, I've never wanted a career. So I don't know if you should ask me for career advice, because I didn't really have a plan around career. It was more around like, I feel like I experienced this very Forrest Gump type of life where I kind of kept stumbling into these amazing groups who I always felt were like this far above where I was. And then you guess what? You average up to what they're capable of. And then the next adventure I stumbled into, and even higher. And then I kept averaging up. And so like that old adage of like, you are the average of the 5 people you put yourself around. It's absolute. My entire life story is that. And I didn't know that. And if you would have told me that even when I was 20, I wouldn't have believed anything you said. But my entire experience has been that. So that is why it's so important to keep putting yourself basically in the deep water, the deep end of the pool, and you will average up, if you're motivated to that group, that peer set that you have.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's probably one of the most I guess unthought of, parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I talk to a lot of CEOs who are in a CEO group as an example, or a peer group, another exec. And they kind of sit there and I've always asked them the question, are you giving more in that peer group or are you getting more, right? And if you're giving 80, 90% of it in a peer group, you're in the wrong peer group, right? You've graduated out of that peer group, and you have to surround yourself with people that you almost look around. And I know I've been in many rooms like this in the last year or two. I'm sure you have, where you look around and go, why am I in this room? Right. And
that's my favorite. You're absolutely right.
And if you're not feeling that, then amongst your peers, right? Like then you got to challenge yourself more. You've got to push yourself more.
Yeah, I think, I love that you talk about that, because I think about it so much, because when I talk to people about this and they do have peer groups, like you always have to be assessing, or you always have to be, and it's hard because people are like, well, these people are nice and they're my friends and what have you. It's like, that's great. You should have that. But you also have this other dimension that you should work on, and you have to focus on that and continually keep moving into uncomfortable situations. I know you do it. I've seen you do it, and I keep doing it. And like, that's the only way. You're not going to bring everyone with you. You have to keep averaging up to the next set of peers.
Couldn't agree more. Awesome. We could talk forever on that one. So crazy world, global pandemic. Dealing with business, dealing with personal lives. I love to ask guests, what is one thing you missed the most? In the old world, or you would love to get back to, and then where have you find, and then counter that with, where have you found a bit of joy that even in a global pandemic, where have you spent time? What have you really enjoyed? It's a tough time, obviously, in the last few months.
Yeah, they're kind of like two sides of the same coin. I think like the surprising thing for me, well, I was doing a lot of business travel, like I know you do, but like there was a part of me, which no one will believe if they know me, because I'm so robotic, right? But there was a part of me that I missed, which was like spontaneous travel, not business travel, just spontaneously being able to just like go somewhere. So I missed that part, right? But I've been able to, on the flip side of that, what I really enjoy now is we're all working remotely, we're portable, like we can actually have more control of our day. So I love that part. And I happen to, I have a place in Vermont, which I never used to go to. And now I try to spend like 2 days a week there, which has been like amazing. So I'm getting to know like a place that I should know more through this challenging times.
That's great.
Super fortunate. Yeah.
You like me are not missing the 90-minute commute, going 5 miles an hour.
No, I never want to go back to that.
I know. So I guess last question for me, and then feel free to turn the tables, but future of work, there's people who have gone, work from anywhere, never to go back in an office. There's, people that are in the middle. There's people who are, I think one of the big banks just called back all their traders and said, you're in the office in a week from now. What's DC's view of the future of work?
We've obviously, like you, we've been talking so much about this. I think I'm extremely on the other end of like, we're not going to go back in the same way that everyone's thinking. And I think, and for me, it has nothing to do with vaccines, no vaccines, adherence, and all that stuff. I'm not qualified to talk about that, but I think we have gone through globally, we've gone through together a mass traumatic experience, and you cannot just unwind that in any way, even if there's magic vaccines tomorrow. If we think about, and not to compare it to this, but like to the magnitude, but if you think about people who went through the depression, you went through other trauma, like even when there was money, even when there was food, like they could not come back that easily. It is a mass trauma that we've gone through. And so this idea that we're going to come back, it's hard, right? You and I, we went through the craziness that was 9/11, which we just celebrated the anniversary of. And that took at least a decade to come back. And that was very easy to identify compared to what we've gone through now. And it was very localized versus the global scale that this is at. And so I think the idea that we'll just go back to offices and no one will have any, trauma from that, I don't think is realistic. So I'm on that side of things. I think we're forever changed. There's a new normal that's being formed right now, and we're not going to go back to this other world.
Yeah, I keep telling Flymates, the hard part is I can't just mandate what it is, right? We have to figure it out together, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And people are uncomfortable with that. You and I are probably more used to being in uncomfortable situations. It doesn't make it easier, but like we put ourselves on purpose in them. but most of the people that we work with are not used to that. And so like, it's going to take a lot of care to get them through this.
For sure. Well, hey, we're about to wrap up. Any questions for me? You want to throw one back at me? I've been firing them all at you.
Yeah. When are we going to get real coffee?
Yeah, I think we're going to end up at Zoomies sooner or later. So
Okay.
I'm ready when you are, man. We'll make it happen.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right, buddy. Thanks for coming. And thanks everybody. Add comments. DC and I will respond on LinkedIn or social.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Later.